Welcome to Sands of History, where we dig into the forgotten currents beneath the surface of world events. If you value our content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also check the description below for the links that allow you to support us financially. Your contribution helps us keep this channel thriving. Today's topic delves into a compelling saga of imperial ambition, regional upheaval, and national trauma. The interventions of the Russian and Soviet empires in Persia, modern Iran, and Afghanistan. Through wars, treaties, and covert maneuvers, Moscow sought to shape the destinies of its southern neighbors, and in doing so left a legacy still reverberating today. In this video, we will explore two broad theaters. Firstly, the Russian-Persian confrontations of the 19th and early 20th century. Secondly, the Soviet-Russian interventions into Afghanistan. We will ask, why did Russia intervene? What forms did the interventions take? What were their consequences? And how do those interventions continue to shape the region? So let's embark on this journey, strap in, as we traverse empires, deserts, and the shadows of the Great Game. Russian interventions in Persia, imperial ambitions and early contacts. The Tsarist Russian state had long looked southwards toward the Caucasus, the Caspian Sea, and ultimately Persia. From the late 18th and into the 19th century, Moscow sought to expand its influence, secure buffer zones, and exploit Persia's weakened state. Persia, under the Qajar dynasty, was internally unstable and externally threatened by the Ottoman Empire, Britain, and Russia. Russia's motivations included securing Caspian littoral dominance, accessing warm water outlets, and pushing the frontier of imperial power. Major wars and treaties, the Russo-Persian War, 1804–1813, is the first major conflict in this story. Russia defeated Persia and forced it into the Treaty of Gulistan on the 24th of October, 1813. Under this treaty, Persia ceded large portions of the Caucasus region, modern-day Azerbaijan, Armenia, parts of Georgia, to Russia. The Russo-Persian War, 1826–1828, followed from Persian attempts to reclaim territory. The war ended with the Treaty of Turkmenchay, 22nd of February 1828, which inflicted still harsher terms on Persia. It ceded even more land, the Yerevan and Nakhchivan Khanates, to Russia, and accepted Russian dominance in the region. These treaties are watershed moments. Persia's northwestern frontier was altered irrevocably. Russia gained Caspian maritime supremacy, and Persia entered a period of semi-colonial dependence. Political economic domination, beyond outright war, Russian influence in Persia extended into political, diplomatic, and economic interventions. Russia inserted itself into Persian internal politics, sometimes supporting pro-Russian elites or intervening diplomatically. The region came to see Russia as a looming threat. As one study summarizes, the image of Imperial Russia as an enemy in the Iranians' collective memory is closely tied to these interventions and losses. The Great Game context. Persia's vulnerability was heightened by the rivalry between Britain and Russia in Asia, the so-called Great Game. Persia became a buffer state, but one whose sovereignty was violated repeatedly by both empires. Russia used Persia as a stepping stone to exert influence over Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Afghanistan. Legacy in Persia-Iran. The interventions had deep consequences for Persia-Iran, the loss of territory, economic concessions, and humiliation in the eyes of many Persians. The treaties left a mark on national identity and memory. As the literature notes, the anti-Russian sentiment was rife in Persia following the Fifth Russo-Persian War's conclusion and the Turkmenchay Treaty's signing. Thus, Russian intervention in Persia set the stage for Iran's 20th century struggles over sovereignty, modernization, foreign domination, and national identity. Russian-Soviet interventions in Afghanistan. Historical background: Russia and Afghanistan. While the Persian story is largely 19th century, the Afghan one spans from the Tsarist to the Soviet era, and even the present Russian Federation. The region of Afghanistan was always a strategic frontier for Russia. the British and local powers. According to diplomatic sources, relations between Afghanistan and Russia first emerged in the 19th century. The Soviet Union intervened in Afghanistan against the Basmachi movement in 1929 and 1930. Russia's interest in Afghanistan stems from guarding its southern borders, preventing British influence, and later spreading Soviet influence. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, 1979 to 1989. The major intervention is the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan on the 24th of December 1979, when the Tsar Revolution government in Kabul was in crisis. Soviet troops, numbering some 30,000 at the start, entered to prop up the communist government and installed a puppet leader, Babrak Karmal, after killing President Hafizullah Amin. The war then evolved into a brutal decade-long stalemate. Soviet forces held towns and major bases, while the Mujahideen, insurgent groups, ranged freely in the countryside. Bombing, counterinsurgency operations, and heavy civilian casualties ensued. By 1989, the Soviet Union withdrew, having failed to subdue the country, and the intervention became one of the factors in the Soviet collapse. Motivations. Geopolitics. Why did the Soviets intervene? According to historians, to preserve a friendly socialist regime on its southern flank. To deny the US and its proxies a victory in a major Cold War front. To maintain influence in Central Asia and resist encirclement by hostile powers. The war also played out in the context of the Great Game. Britain had long feared Russian expansion toward India via Afghanistan. The Soviet invasion revived those old anxieties for the West. Other Soviet-Russian interventions influence. Although the 1979 to 1989 war is the most dramatic, Russia's involvement in Afghanistan predates and follows it. In 1929, the Red Army intervention in Afghanistan, 1929, occurred when Soviet troops helped suppress anti-government forces. During the 1990s and 2000s, Russia supplied arms and logistics indirectly to factions in Afghanistan and neighboring Tajikistan. In the present day, under the Russian Federation, Moscow is engaging diplomatically and strategically with Afghanistan's de facto rulers, the Taliban, seeking stability and influence. Recent news item. Consequences for Afghanistan and Russia. For Afghanistan, the consequences were catastrophic. At least hundreds of thousands of Afghans died. Millions fled as refugees. Vast damage to infrastructure and state institutions. The war entrenched militancy, civil war and regional instability, opening the space for later extremist groups. For the Soviet Union, the Afghan war drained resources, morale, and contributed to its eventual collapse. For Russia, the intervention signaled its willingness to use military force beyond its borders and revealed the limits of power, projection, a lesson Moscow has recalled in later conflicts, comparative themes, wider implications, sovereignty versus imperial predation. In both Persia and Afghanistan, the dynamic is similar. A great power, Russia, challenged the sovereignty of smaller states, exploited internal weaknesses, and intervened militarily or diplomatically to gain strategic advantages. Over time, those interventions left lasting scars on national consciousness. 2. Border and buffer politics. Both theaters illustrate the buffer state logic of imperial strategy. Russia viewed Persia and Afghanistan not merely as independent states, but as part of its sphere of influence and as buffers against other powers: Britain, Ottoman Empire, US. The territorial losses of Persia in the treaties and the Soviet push into Afghanistan show how border politics dominated. The role of treaties and coercion, treaties such as Gulistan and Turkmenchay in Persia and the later Geneva Accords in Afghanistan, reflect how military victory was cemented into diplomatic settlement. In Persia, the treaties institutionalized Russian dominance. In Afghanistan, the withdrawal agreement in 1988 formalized the end of active Soviet intervention. Memory and legacy, the interventions left deep imprints. In Iran, Persia, The loss of Caucasian lands remains a sensitive historical wound, and Russia features in Iranian collective memory as an adversary. In Afghanistan, the legacy of the Soviet war haunts the modern state, with infrastructure, institutions, and social fabric all affected. Relevance to contemporary geopolitics, Russia's historical interventions inform its current posture in the region. For example, Moscow provides military and diplomatic support to Afghanistan, engages with the Taliban regime, and asserts its relevance as a regional power. The Persian-Iranian case resonates too, as Iran manages its northern borders, relations with Russia and historical grievances. Understanding these interventions helps us understand current Russian-Iranian-Afghan dynamics. Case studies in detail. Persia, the Treaty of Gulistan, 1813. Under the Gulistan Treaty, Persia ceded key territories to Russia, including the Khanates of Ganja, Karabakh, the Talish, and others. Russia also won exclusive rights on the Caspian, altering the strategic geography. For Persia, it marked the beginning of a sharp decline in independent foreign policy room. Persia, the Treaty of Turkmenchay, 1828. The Turkmenchay Treaty further stripped Persia of territory and rights. It fixed the Aras River as a frontier and forced Persia to pay indemnities, consent to Russian merchants' rights, and recognize Russian suzerainty in several respects. The Persian reaction was fierce. A well-documented outburst of anti-Russian sentiment, including the killing of Russian diplomats in Tehran in 1829. Afghanistan, Soviet invasion and war, 1979 to 1989. In 1979, the Soviet Union decided to intervene directly. The night of 24th December saw airborne troops secure key installations in Kabul. President Amin was killed, Karmal installed. Over the next decade, the war became a quagmire. According to estimates, Soviet casualties were around 15,000, while Afghan civilian deaths numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Afghanistan, post-Soviet and modern Russian role. After the Soviet withdrawal, Afghanistan descended into civil war, Taliban rule, and eventually the US invasion. In recent years, Russia has re-emerged as a diplomatic actor, engaging the Taliban, recognizing the need to protect its southern security interests and projecting power. For example, Russia signed agreements to assist in counter-terrorism with the Taliban. Why it matters for today. Regional security. The borders drawn and agreements forced by Russia in Persia continue to demarcate current states. Afghan instability continues to be influenced by historic interventions. Identity and memory. Persia-Iran retains a memory of humiliation and loss. Afghanistan regards the Soviet war as a trauma and continuation of foreign intrusions. Great power competition. The great game between Russia and Britain and the Cold War in Afghanistan mirror today's dynamics of external powers intervening in this strategic region, including China, US-Russia, Iran, Pakistan. Lessons in intervention. The Russian experiences territorial conquest, occupation, quagmire, show the risks of military intervention in difficult terrain and hostile societies. Geopolitical alignments. Russia's long-standing influence in Iran and Afghanistan feeds into its current foreign policy calculus, pipelines, trade routes, counter-terrorism, and regional alliances. Conclusion. We've traced the story of Russian interventions in Persia and Afghanistan, from Tsarist wars and coercive treaties in Persia to Soviet invasions and modern Russian diplomacy in Afghanistan. These are not just episodes of history, but living legacies that shape the geopolitics, identities, and societies of these regions. As we wrap up, if you found value in this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help us continue producing such deep-dive historical content, please check the support links in the description below. Your donation makes a difference. Thank you for joining Sands of History. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, the sands of history are shifting beneath our feet. Like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget the support links in the description.